Okay, so our objective today is I can prove quads are rectangles, squares, rhombi, and trapezoids by using their properties. We will actually look at trapezoids tomorrow, but again, that's the basic idea of what we're looking at for the next 2 days. And the Excel skills that I'm going to suggest you start are going to be N4 and N5. This is video 5.4, so please make sure you note that down. So here we go with our first definition. A rhombus, okay? A rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. So I'm going to draw a rhombus. And a rhombus, again, just has 4 congruent sides. A rectangle. A rectangle is going to be a parallelogram with 4 right angles. So if we think about, again, what a rectangle is, it's got 4 right angles. Okay? And a square. A square is going to be a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides and 4 right angles. So if you're thinking, well, a square is pretty cool because it has both the features of a rhombus and a rectangle, then you are right. It actually does. So just make sure you're marking it correctly. So let's talk about the diagonals, the actual diagonals of these figures. So if we have a rhombus, if we look more closely at a rhombus is really cool in the sense that a rhombus, let's draw one here. A rhombus, while it has its 4 sides congruent, also has diagonals, when you draw them in, that actually are perpendicular, which means they meet and form 4 right angles. Okay? Diagonals also are going to bisect the angles that they are there. So they bisect the angles and they cut them in half. And that's something that's going to be very useful later on as we look at it. Okay? Now, a rectangle, these are the diagonals that you've been waiting for. If you make a rectangle, the diagonals here are going to be congruent, which means that we already know that every parallelogram, and a rectangle is a parallelogram, is bisected. So the pieces are going to be, this is going to be congruent to this piece, and this piece is going to be congruent to this piece. But now the entire diagonal is congruent to the other entire diagonal. So let's look at some examples. Here's example number 1. It says, is parallelogram KLMN a rhombus, a rectangle, or a square? Explain. So let's look at what we have. We've got some right angles marked, and we know it's a parallelogram. So if it's a parallelogram, we know that these 2 angles here, let's call this angle L here, okay, plus angle K, have to add up to 180 because consecutive angles are supplementary, and that's from parallelograms. So if K is 90, then L has to be 90. That means that we have 3 right angles, and the same thing is true about N. So now we've got 4 right angles, so this definitely has to be a rectangle. It has to be a rectangle because we have 4 right angles. Okay? We can't say it's a square because we don't know anything about the diagonals right now. They didn't tell us anything, so that's all we can say. All right, moving on to question number 2. If we know that NL is 11.5, okay, so NL, and that's our diagonal here, they want to know, well, how big is KM, which is the other diagonal? And if we have a rectangle, then we know rectangles, the diagonals are congruent. So that automatically means that KM is the same as NL. So that means KM is going to be 11.5. Okay. Number 3. HIJK is a rhombus. Okay. So what are the measurements of IKJ and HIK? Okay. So these 2 angles here. So we know with the rhombus that the angles are bisected by the diagonal. So that means these 2 angles are the same. They're congruent. They're equal. So if we set them equal to each other and then solve this for x, we will find that x equals 11, and then go ahead and substitute xn as 11 into both smaller angles. We will find out that IKJ is going to be 63. And hey, HIK equals 63 too. And that's also what we were supposed to find because we know these are going to be congruent. All right, so here's the secret hot question. It says your class needs to find the value of x for which parallelogram DEFG is a rectangle. A classmate's work is shown below. What does the error explain? For the top, we've got 9x minus 6 and 2x plus 3. And they're trying to add them together or set them equal to each other and finding x equals 2. So what is the error you want to explain? I will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day.